Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be talking about the showcase, Alliance War Showcase, a solo quest, a solo content that is effectively repurposing Tier 1 Alliance War fights. And there has definitely been like a mixed reception to it. And we're going to be going over your feedback much more than mine, and I will simply do my best to kind of like put perspective on it or put it into the words, as well as we're going to take a look at your own comments. But it is quite clear that Alliance Wars Showcase has done not any favors to the overall appeal of Alliance War, which I think is the fundamental problem here. That is a bigger issue that probably Kabam might realize, and I think that is where the oversight is coming from. Because Tier 1 Alliance Wars is like a very, very specific type of breed of situations, right? Well, first of all, without taking a look at the fact that this quest does not necessarily mirror an Alliance War experience from the higher tiers, because again, you're by yourself, you don't have the teammates who could put on the pre-fights for you or an officers that could plan for you, and you're probably not going to be willing to go in hard on all the boosts, and you don't have the Alliance War boosts, and so on and so forth. So it's completely different situation from the Alliance War in itself, which again is kind of actually, I think, an important point for people to understand, because the war in reality is not as hard as it's made out to be here. For instance, that super annoying Sasquatch, you need to realize that it's going to be 1 out of 10 people in the battle group who is going to be dealing with that Sasquatch. It's not going to happen every war. It's likely not going to be you. And even if you do, you will have several advantages, like people placing Magneto House Effects pre-fight on you, so you can still stun him whilst he's debuff immune. People, giving perhaps you some other pre-fights, or again, you yourself boosting up to the guild for that fight specifically in order not to die. So not everybody has to do the level of difficulty fights that you guys saw in this war every single time. So this is more so me trying to convince people that Alliance War in Tier 1 is nowhere near as bad as this, typically, for most part. Except this season, I guess, because this season is quite rough. But where I think the problem lies, and this is a very, very kind of like good post here, where you can see that 95% of the community is less likely try and play Serious Alliance War after this quest. And that's the opposite of what Kabam should want to do. And again, we can debate here whether, the quest was hard, whether it was fair, whether the rewards for it were good enough, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, that debate does not matter as much as what community feels about it. It's kind of like, I don't know, if you're an artist or a chef and you prepare a meal, and you might think that you did everything perfectly. You might think that it's the best food that you have ever cooked in your life. But if every person, or in this case, 95% of the people dislike what you made, you have ultimately failed. And that is, often, for Kabam, or should be often, the measure of success. Whether people liked it, whether, they enjoyed it, whether it encouraged them to kind of like come back and do it more. And in this case, whether this quest encouraged people to participate in Alliance War itself, whether they enjoyed this quest to begin with. And here, undoubtedly, the answer is no. And again, this is not me trying to harp on Kabam. Quite the opposite. It's me actually trying to help Kabam to try and understand, because there clearly is disconnect with a lot of content design philosophies that is becoming more and more visible right now. When it comes with the Karina challenges, when it comes with Alliance War tactic, when it comes with the champion design, defender influx, when it comes to battlegrounds metas, there clearly is bigger and bigger disconnect happening in between what community enjoys and what makes this game fun for most people to what Kabam's doing. And ultimately, that is the most likely way of this game's demise. If the game just stops being fun, unless people play it because they don't enjoy it as much. Regardless of whether Kabams thinks that they did everything correctly. Regardless of whether Kabam thinks that the level of difficulty is appropriate or that these super tough defenders and metas are good for the game. They can think that, but if people don't like it, and if people play less as an end result of it, it's just not good. It's delusional to say it is good for the game if, most people dislike it. So this is where we're at. And this is the main point I'm trying, I think for like months now, especially like to drive home to Kabam. Because I do know they watch my videos. I absolutely do know that plenty of them in the office watch my videos. And I really hope that there are some serious discussions happening about what is the design goal of any new content. Obviously, there's game economy that needs to be managed. Obviously, there has to be like challenges, and nothing can be given stupidly easy to the players, and there are certain expectations for them in items use, and all that things are fine. Nobody has an issue in using a revive in a quest. As long as they're enjoying it, as long as they think it's worth it, as long as it's fun. And that comes, at different levels for different players, obviously what they consider to be fun, and they can never please everybody. But they should aim to please more than 5% of Paragon and Valiant players. So if we were to split it up, I'd say Paragon and Valiant players are probably like 10 or 20% of the player base, or whatever it is, the portion of the player base. And then they create a content that pleases 5% of that portion of the player base. It's not good. Very, very, very much so not good, right? And we can take a look at some of your responses here as well. Bad example of top tier war, you don't usually take 8-9 fights in a war. Absolutely, I agree with that. Absolute L content, come on, put waste our viewers and energy refills, not interested. Actually, like doing this as solo content, but there's no way I'd want to do this multiple times with my ally. Again, you don't really have to do this with your alliance, because again, it's different. There's some dick measuring contest happening yet again. No, I was never interested in the first place. Again, people are kind of defending war when this, is not what you have to do in the war. And not to mention, 7 stars for some defenders don't exist yet. Absolutely. They never said it's gonna be like relay W. Okay, fair enough. They never. Okay. But anyway, I want to bring some interest to Greater Challenge. Okay, this is just an extremely poorly timed reminder of how just 2 tactics ago war was kind of fun. Yeah, this is the easier. This is the easier war season, by the way, guys. Both Crush and Magic Thief X Magica are way harder than this. And we do have Kabams Response here as well. We do have Kabams Response. So I do want to cover that. Because we have Kabam Jacks popping in. So it might be worth pointing out, as Deacon mentioned, it wasn't the intention of this content to entice Summoner, who's more solo focused, to eagerly join up for high-level Alliance War. Okay, they kind of made it seem like it was one of the purposes of this. It was mostly the opposite, to repurpose and utilize existing content that only a small percentage of summoners encounter and make it accessible for more players. For more internal design perspective, getting more bang for the buck from the game team's hard work. Personally, me and my baby Paragon brain read the notes and got overwhelmed very quickly, so I understand the jaw-dropping reaction as we realized what high-level alliances encounter on the regular. There's reason y'all summoners, not dominers. Okay, so I understand the logic behind it, but yet again, as with many things that Kabam does, I think it's a big oversight. I think when you take a step back, releasing this content, ultimately, from Kabam's perspective, should be considered as a mistake. maybe they initially looked at it as getting more bang for your buck, but then the result is unquestionable, as we can see in this poll, that because Kabam tried to get more bang for their buck, they pushed away a very large chunk of player base from one of their premium game modes. And that cannot be a good result. So from that perspective, it's like they might have released the content that, sucked out some revives from us, sucked out some energy refills, and got like a minor win, let's say, minor profit increase in very short term. But in long term, they lost a lot of players who would have participated potentially in wars, or more likely would have tried their hands in wars and spent some items there over the course of time. But a lot of people won't, or are less likely to, because of this piece of content. And in general, have been just made more frustrated than they were before the release of this content, which again, not necessarily something that's good for the game overall. So again, getting more bang for your buck might be a very good short-term move, but ultimately it just agitated the community and potentially harmed, more important, permanent, repeating core game mode of the game. Let's move on. Another one. Great. It's a bit of a push and pull, a balancing act. The King Groot piece is something to entice people to try out new content, but then it elevates the stakes a bit. Hypothetically, without the Deathless piece, more summoners would sidestep content, which isn't exactly ideal for an entirely new concept. But you're right. It does feel like you feel more pressure to try in something new, and trying new things can be uncomfortable. Now, I don't like how this is worded. So he's saying like, without the Deathless piece, more people would ignore this piece of content, which is absolutely correctly. Which goes against all of the smart people who say, it's an optional content, you don't have to do it. Kabam themselves realize and state here that adding Deathless piece in for this content kind of pushes more summoners into it. And if you break it down far enough, any and every single game mode and piece of content is optional. You don't have to do anything. But you cannot deny that here Kabam confirms that they initially intentionally put in that King Groot Deathless piece in there to try and push more people in there into doing this content. So you can say it's optional, fair enough, just like any other content in the game is optional. You don't have to do anything, but at the same time, Kabam is putting emphasis on this content to get more people in it. So yeah, it does feel more pressure to try something new, and it's again not about things being uncomfortable as much as it's unenjoyable, and that's the difference. Because you can make people uncomfortable, but if you have done a good job and they step out of their zone of comfort, they can still enjoy the time. And here's again the key thing that I think Kabam's missing with a lot of what's happening in the game. Put it through the prism and perspective of enjoyment and fun. Not comfort, not, game economy, not how tough it is. I think Kabam has clearly forgotten that it's a game in some aspects, meant to be fun. It's not like a country that you manage and you just need to focus on economy and balance and things like that. Everything you do, or almost everything they do in a game, should be put through the question, will this be fun? Will this be enjoyable? And there will be areas where it might not be as relevant, but you should still ask, even if you're going to be doing something unpopular that the players will hate, you need to ask how much they will hate it, how much it will ruin the enjoyment and fun. At the same time, the Deathless Champ chase has always been exactly that, a chase. It's meant to be difficult and aspirational. We said a lot of people would try it and some would fail along the way, so a new difficult concept does fit the bill for how this piece have been presented. And again, I do agree with this. There's, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong in quote-unquote Kabam putting this Deathless piece in hard pieces in hard content. if that's where they want to go and that's how they want to go. But again, they do need to be aware of whether they like it or not, that has its consequences. For instance, so closely associating this piece of content strictly with Alliance War does paint Alliance War in a shitty light. And again, does push players away from Alliance War. If this was a single solo content and Kabam had shut their mouth off and said this has nothing to do with Alliance War and the fights were different and they didn't advertise as such, it wouldn't have as much as a drawback on any other area, right? But since they associate this so closely with Alliance War, the dissatisfaction of the players with this particular piece of content can also and does get transferred to the Alliance War, which is kind of like the inspiration or source to it, which cannot be good for Alliance War, an image of Alliance War. And therefore, it's just a strategic mistake by Kabam, in my opinion. Ultimately, I understand both sides and feel conflicting feels, and it's making me stressed, so I'm going to stop thinking about it, go lay down and contemplate life for a minute. And again, he's saying he understands the both sides, but what they need to take in consideration that one side is 5% of top 20% of the players. So one side is marginally smaller. So let's say that 1/5 of the players playing this game or 1/10 of the players playing this game is Paragon or Valiant. Possibly more, possibly less. I don't have the data. Okay, fine, 20%. So out of those 20%, 1/20th. So what they do understand is, again, it's just like the 1%, and they kind of equate it by saying both sides. This should be described as vast majority and vast minority, or almost everyone either do not have access to this content, or didn't like it, or are less likely to play Alliance War because of it. And the 1%, and that would be the same 1% who already probably plays Alliance War, that it's fine or awesome. So that's where we're at. Kabam cannot succeed without differentiating that 1% is happy, 99% is unhappy, and go around or unaffected by something that they did and go around pretending that it's good. No, you're not gonna make a successful game where 99% of your player base either doesn't have access to or hates the content that you release. Well, let me know what you guys think. And I'll catch you guys soon. Bye. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next